And good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Live. Have you considered what is your desire? Not just in the money area of your life, but what is it that you desire spiritually? Hmm. How about for your family? Hmm. Financially? How about the desire for your health consciousness? How about your education? Do you have a desire in that area? Personally development, personally develop, personal development. How about your business? Well, you must have a desire in order to achieve any major accomplishments in your life. And that is our welcome today to our special podcast discussing the desire principle from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And if you think about any possible desire, if you think about anything that you have ever achieved, anything that you've truly wanted with a burning desire, hmm, chances are you did achieve that. Well, today we are going to be sharing this principle and talking with a very special guest. Yes, you already know. And that special guest is none other than Deborah Biddle. We're going to introduce her in a few minutes, but just a little bit about Deborah. You see, Deborah is a highly regarded person in her field, especially in the area of DE&I, diversity and inclusion with equity. Now, that's a very special subject for me. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I would be remiss if I did not also share that we have some special co hosts today, also. Let me first introduce Dr. Peter James. Good morning. And of course, the man of the hour. We're going to talk about that hour, and that is Galen Bingham. Good morning to both of you this morning. How are you both?
Good, good morning there, Ann McNeil. Excited to be here on another Saturday edition of Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Live. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and you were right, Ann. We have a very special guest, and we're going to dive on into this topic of desire. And many people think that, you know, people who achieve success, it just happens for them, or they're just so smart. But you and I know a secret about what happens to those ultra successful individuals, the process that they go through. And the number one part of this process is what you have described in the outset, is the desire aspect. And Napoleon Hill talks about desire in chapter 1, principle 1 of Think and Grow Rich. He goes on to say, there is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. You are never ready for a thing until you believe you can acquire it. I wonder if our listeners, if our watchers fall in that category, if they truly believe and are sitting in that belief. I don't know, Galen. I think that's your cue, man.
Yeah, so this is first of all, I'm just so excited to be here every week to learn from our guests and to hang out with my mastermind members, Miss Ann McNeil and Dr. Peter James. This is a really important principle because this is the fuel behind anything that you want to achieve. And I love the way Napoleon Hill says it. He says, if you don't see great riches in your imaginations, you will never see them in your bank balance. So this is the work. This is the work. And another phrase that I love to share with my clients is we don't get what we want. We get what we think about all the time. We don't get what we want. We don't even get what we deserve. We get what we think about all of the time. And that requires a desire. You have to have a desire to Ann's point. You have to have a desire in order to achieve anything, especially anything of significance. So I can't wait to get into this conversation so that we can learn from our guests.
All right. Speaking of our guests, uh, we're going to bring Deborah Biddle on. Good morning, Deborah. Again, how are you this morning? And welcome.
Good morning. Doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's easy to read a little about your bio, and we traditionally do that. And I like to intermittently read the bio throughout. So, if it's okay with you, so that I can make sure I give you your proper props, I'm going to just read just a little, and then we're going to ask you to share a little bit more prior to our going to the 13 principles. So, our guest today, Ms. Deborah Biddle, like I said, shared earlier, is highly regarded for her poised and level-headed. Let me stop right there, Deborah. I've known you for a little while, and when I read this the first time, you came to mind in terms of how you interact with many of us as a part of our Black NSA Mastermind. It has always been so level, so easygoing. And so naturally, that is a natural attribute. So I just want to just take a moment and share that with the public and encourage them to connect with you.
Hey.
Uh, all right. Now I could go on and read what this shares about your diversity, equity, and inclusion involvement, but I think it may be more appropriate to have you share. Go back a little bit and help us understand, how did you get to this work? Because again, as many of us know, those people that look like us, not those people, but those who look like us, it's always been called a different name, whether you call it diversity, equity, inclusion, minority, this, that. How did you get to this work? If you can just take us all the way back and share with us a little, and then we're going to go to the 13 principles, and we're going to come back and go into a deep dive into your story.
Okay. So I'll give you the quick because it's a long story, but I have always been really justice and fairness oriented from the time I was very young and I first learned about Martin Luther King Jr. I've always wanted to lead and always wanted to be the president of something and always loved music and I've always loved math. So my career trajectory was in finance and accounting. And then from there, I opened a record label and sang for several years. Then I became a full-time mother, then went back into the workforce to do career coaching because my husband went into full-time ministry and I needed to go back to work. And from there, launched my company, which I didn't think was going to be a DEI company. I wanted to coach women leaders, and it ended up, by many twists and turns we can talk about later, being a DEI consulting firm.
All right. All right. Well, let's put a pin in that for just a moment, and let us go to Galen, who's going to share the 13 principles. But before you do that, Galen, we're going to ask everybody, please remember to subscribe to this YouTube. But also, right this moment, if you're listening live, contact somebody that you know, share this on your social media, make a comment, make a post. But equally as important, let us hear from you with any questions or comments you have in the chat, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or whether you're watching on YouTube. Let us hear from you and know if you have anything that you'd like to share, because again, this is the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind, but we desire every week to hold you accountable for reading the book and also something that you'd like to share in terms of accountability. So, Galen.
Yeah, so yeah, really, really important that you join us because this is where your growth comes from in these principles. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you to Shannon, to Diane, to Doretha, Yolanda. Thank you for joining us there on YouTube. Definitely be sure you hit that little thumbs up button that's there right underneath the screen so that other folks will know that we're here. Uh, the one of the things that I really wanted to go back to is what is a principle? Because we're going to talk about the 13 principles, but a principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for system, belief, or behavior. And that's what we're going to be talking about here shortly. These are the 13 principles that seem to contribute to how we succeed, how we achieve goals on purpose. As I've said before, any of us can achieve success accidentally, but how do you decide this is the thing that I want and then put things in place in order to achieve what you say is your desire? So take a listen to these principles, and we'll be back on the other side.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right. All right. Thank you so very much for that, Galen. And you are back with a comment. Go ahead, Galen.
No, I was just saying that we really want to get into this conversation because one of the things that Deborah shared with us before we went live is one of my favorite phrases because it reminds me of a team member I had when she said we were asking if she understood what we were going to be doing, and she said she was as clear as crystal. And I was just really taken by how desire really does require that you have a clear vision of what you want. And so I didn't know if there was an opportunity to build on that as we start this conversation. How important is it to have a clear vision of what you're wanting to achieve?
Yes, clarity is called that clarity, Galen. And I think that Napoleon Hill shares that all achievement starts with that type of clarity in that desire. And so you're as clear as crystal, Galen, in your point. So thank you for that. So Deborah, let's come back to you and let's talk about one of your first desires as relates to this particular principle and how this book has, is, and possibly will impact your business and or your life. How is this book in the past, currently, or in the future impacting your life? But before you go there, I want to go back to your first introduction because I love asking that question. And I think it's so very important that our listeners understand. We have guests that come on that this is the first time reading it in preparation for the podcast, or they've been through the book 4 or 5 times and sometimes just starting to get it, if you will. Now, what about you? What's your first introduction? And then we'll go back to the impact the this book is having on this principle.
The book I first became aware of probably 20 or 25 years ago. My husband was in sales and he's an avarice reader. And so he was reading anything he thought could help him improve his sales business. And that's when I first heard about this book. I hadn't read it until quite a few years later. But the thing that resonated with me about desire was the comment that I read related to the Barnes story, where he said he left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. And most recently, that became impactful for me during COVID-19. As a consultant and a speaker, I, like many others, lost all my business, it seemed almost overnight, except for one client. And I knew that if I was going to make it, I had to figure out something else to do. And it was this attitude, this desire of knowing that I had no possible way except to go forward. So that desire propelled me into coming up with new and innovative processes and programs for me that helped me not only win, but have the biggest year I had had in my business up to that point, and
Oh,
set me.
excuse me. I'm sorry. Could you just repeat that? Could you just, if you don't mind, could you repeat that, please?
I was just saying that the desire that I had helped me during COVID to have the biggest year in my business that I had had up to that point. When other people were folding, I was having exponential growth that year and for the 2 years after that as well. So 2020, 2021, and 2022, I grew my business and made the most money I've ever made in my life.
Okay. I know that the co-hosts are jumping and so Peter, if you want to go ahead because I see you leaning forward through this camera and I'm about to touch you. So you
No,
go ahead.
I'm loving the conversation there, Anna. Thank you so much there, Deborah. You know, you've said a few things for sure. Um, one about burning the ships a little bit, you know, ensuring that you're leaning in on things, as Napoleon Hill says. You also talked about what this looked like in your life overall. And this next question is going to be for the future. What have you learned, especially from that experience during 2020, 2021, that you are now applying for your business career moving forward? We're now on the cusp here, actually not in the early parts of 2024. And I'd love to hear how you're seeing the future, especially from the desire perspective and what you learned.
Yeah, the future, like last year, to be transparent, wasn't as great as the previous three, which, you can't expect bountiful exponential growth every single year. It was a great year, but not as great as the years prior. And what I learned is that I have to keep my feet to the fire, as it were. One of the quotes in the book says that those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. And for me, new ideas is what helped me to have that growth. And I have to remember that as I go into 2024, 2025 and beyond, that I can't be afraid of what's changing around me, that I have to adapt to that, and that other people aren't going to necessarily see the vision or get what I'm trying to do, but I still have to walk in the faith that I have and the knowledge that I have and the desire that I have to be successful in order to make things work.
Yeah, I love that. I want to follow up really quickly. You said some things that really just got my blood moving a little bit. First thing you said was faith. I know that in the book, Napoleon Hill says that the desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. Love that. But then you also mentioned how the environment can sometimes send you negative, different messages, whether it's media, whether it's people, whether it's just the circumstances can throw things at your way. Um, and I heard you mention that, hey, I got to ignore that. Can you talk a little bit about that and what maybe you've gone through from that perspective, but definitely what you're looking forward to the future, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think so. So from my business, what you all are aware of what's happening politically in the United States, there's this backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion. People are saying, they're calling it reverse discrimination. They're saying it's not going to work, that nobody's interested in that. Governments and states are saying, we're not having that here, threatening employees. And I'm saying, call it whatever you want to call it, but we're still going to be doing it. The facts are that the population is changing, that demographics are changing, that people are wanting and needing different ways to be supported and engaged in the workplace. And if we don't engage in those ways as business people, as community members, we're going to lose employees. We're not going to have the products that are relevant or the services that are meeting the needs of people. We're not going to be as profitable as we need to be. As donors, we're not going to raise the money we need to raise. So say what you will, I have to ignore the noise and still do the work, because the reality is we are becoming a more and more diverse society every day. Despite what those haters have to say or what politicians have to say, I have to have the vision, the faith, the desire, the passion, and the foresight, the clarity, if you will, to go ahead and do what I see and what others have confirmed, what God has said to me that I have to do.
I could sit here and talk all day, so I'm going to say one more thing and just pass it over to the Galen really quick. It makes me think that I wonder if, we just passed Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday. If he was alive today, if he would have faced the same rhetoric, if not worse, that he experienced at his time. And it just that just popped into my head too. Galen, my apologies, man. I can't take over this conversation.
No apologies necessary. I am curious, Deborah, about your thoughts about the difference between someone having an interest in a thing and someone having a burning desire in that thing? Because I'll tell you, I've got an interest in learning other languages. I don't have a burning desire. Interest, it would be interesting. I've got an interest in getting back to my college basketball playing weight, but I'm going to tell you, it's not a burning desire. What's the difference between an interest and a burning desire, particularly in the work that you do? I work with a number of companies who have an interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they demonstrate that they're really not passionately focused on a burning desire for leveraging that.
Yeah, an interest is just a curiosity. Just you find it interesting or titillating for the moment, but it hasn't become purposeful for you. You haven't either experienced enough pain for not doing it, or you haven't found enough joy in the pursuit of doing it. So it's just something that's nice to think about or nice to do. If you have a burning desire for something, you're taking action, you have a plan, you are getting the resources that you need, you are talking to people who can support you and help you, you are keeping yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally supported so that you can do the thing you need to do. And you recognize that whether anyone joins me on this, I am pressing my way to accomplish the goal. And hopefully, the way that you talk about it, and when people see you doing that thing that you want to do, there will be people who will join you in the work. What I have said and what my husband and I joke about all the time, well, we joke, but it's not really a joke. We always say, we'll work with people who want to work with us. And I believe that when you have a burning desire and it's important enough to you, that people will see that and they will want to help you.
I love that. I love that because um, I I think that part of that is biblical as well, right? It's like the other book even suggests that if you share your story and people aren't getting it, you're supposed to keep it moving, keep it pushing, right?
Stop and keep going.
That's right. That's right. And I've seen so many people who misunderstand how to leverage a burning desire. A burning desire isn't necessarily trying to convince other people that what you're doing is the right thing to do. It's really, I love the way you described it. It almost as an internal focus, an internal fueling of this thing that you're wanting to accomplish. How has that journey been for you? What are some examples of times when you were the only one on this island? I like the way Les Brown put it. He said, "Don't worry if other folks can't see your vision, because God gave the vision to you, not to them."
Yeah, it's when I first started my business and people were like, why are you leaving your good job to go do this? And what is it? And who are you talking to? People know that folks are different. How are you going to make money? All of that. Even some people very close to me just did not see what I was trying to do, or they just quietly watched. They didn't naysay, but they weren't supporting either. And I think you have to just be zero focus. I think for me anyway, I've known when I have been called into doing something or the idea has been planted, the seed has been planted, I've known I can feel it. And if I ignore it, it just gnaws at me and saying, you know, you should be doing this, you know, you should be doing this. And so for me, that when I get that feeling, that propels me forward. And I also don't think that you share the vision with everybody.
Mm.
Everybody isn't going to be on your page. Everything isn't for everyone else. And you don't need people telling you what you can't do. You need people who are going to encourage you, even if they can't see it, encourage you along the way. So when that still small voice is telling you, here's what I have for you to do, then you just need to go and do it.
Oh my. Ms. Ann, back to you because she's starting to talk about discernment now.
Listen, everybody, I am just sitting here so excited because this is an excellent example of trying the spirit by the spirit. And for those of you who get that, you'll get that. And for those of you that don't, keep reading the book because what Deborah just did, she went and touched, and I'm counting so far 8 principles. And the one you just tapped into was the one that speaks to the infinite intelligence, whether you want to call it the spirit, whatever it is for each of you as you're listening. But the question for me, Deborah, I want to go backwards to my favorite portion of this principle. And it speaks to the 6 steps. I like to call it in my business, my McNeil Factor 6-step business plan. Can you share with us your experience through the Black NSA Million Dollar Mastermind where we met? Share with us your experience about these 6 steps and how it impacted the bottom line of your business in this last mastermind. Because I remember clearly your number blew me away. So if it's okay, could you share? If you don't want to talk about numbers, you can talk about percentages, whatever's comfortable for you, because this is what I want to do here. I want to make sure that everybody who's listening now and in the future understand that anything you desire, if you are willing, just like you just shared, and I have to look at my notes here, you said, others will not see the vision. I'll call it the desire or your passion. The desire, knowledge, faith, foresight, and passion that I have for my desire. And I'm curious if you can share with us these 6 steps and how you use them and the impact that it had on your business and possibly even your life.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll hit all 6, but I'll give it a whirl. So one
How
of the
about
things,
2 or 3, okay.
one of the things that was helpful for me about being in the mastermind was being around like-minded people who look like me, who were trying to do big things. So that was really, really powerful for me because of where I live and the work that I do, the spaces that I'm in. I very rarely come across people like me. And so that I would say has been the most impactful piece. But then the laser focus on the goals. So every time we met, we were talking about what our goals were and being able to say, here's my goal, and to make it tangible in terms of an actual dollar amount was very intimidating at first, but it got to be something I looked forward to. So talking about the amount of money that I would have in my possession, what I was going to do in order to get it, that forced me to be a little bit more specific about my goals. And then being reminded that not only was I trying to get financial gain, but I was also trying to serve people in the process, and not just serve them any old kind of way, but serve them to the best of my ability by providing valuable products and services that were going to meet their need. And that I had to believe it so strongly that I was going to make it happen. And my masterminds groups have been, each one has been different. And this last one was even more exciting. We actually still meet every Friday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's been a good group. But I don't remember how much I pledged in the first one, but in the second one, I wanted to make $250,000. And I remember Galen was in that group and he said, well, why stop there? So we all raised our dollar amount by some amount. I was chicken. I raised mine only $5,000 more, but that at the end of that mastermind, I don't think I ever gave the final number, but I think I got to 370 something $1,000 by the end of that mastermind.
Hold
And
up,
then
hold up. Excuse me. Pause. Pin in it. Pin in it. Everybody listening on YouTube, I need you to put a comment in the chat, like right now. You can say whatever you want to say if you heard Deborah, but just in case you stepped away or you looked away or you got a cup of coffee or drink of water, we're going to ask her to rewind and share that again. Because after she shared that, then I'm going to come back and share our total number from that particular this current mastermind. And I really want people to understand anything that you desire and whatever you're seeking is seeking you if you are willing to do the inner work. So Deborah, can you just share that last part one more time, please? Because I like to see
Oh,
Galen's
this is two
down.
masterminds ago.
No,
So
that's
my
okay.
goal
That's okay.
that goal was 255,000 in total. And I was able to get to 370. I think it was 379, 379,000. And then the last mastermind, my goal was also 250,000. And I didn't make it, but I did well. I was happy. I got to 137,000. And then later, after the mastermind was over, I actually did exceed that goal. So I got to 259 by the end of the year. So it was a couple weeks late, but it was close. And if I hadn't been in the mastermind with that focus every week of my group saying, okay, what are we doing? Where are we? Hearing the voices of other people say what they were struggling with, what was working for them, hearing their ideas and their experiences, all of that was really encouraging and supportive for me as a solopreneur who works from home primarily. And again, seeing Black people who are focused on growing their businesses was just really powerful for me.
Okay, Galen first and then Peter, because I can just, just turn my camera off and go on mute for the balance of this podcast. Galen?
Again, I want to go back to something that we talked about earlier. This process is not magic,
No.
but it is how you achieve success on purpose, right? There is a process, and that process touches on how the brain works. It touches on universal laws. It touches on all these other things that are out there and just kind of pulls it together. One of the things I want to go back to you, Deborah, about is in that mastermind process, part of the requirement is it has to be money that you don't necessarily anticipate or know where it's coming. So if you've got a salary that's going to generate $100,000 a year, you can't count that $100,000. You can't count what you're expecting. So what I just heard, and this is a 10-week process, what I just heard is you decided that you were going to make $250,000 on purpose, incremental to what you already had. And because you put these steps in place, because you followed the process to achieve this on purpose, you over delivered against your goal. And instead of 275,000, it was 379,000. So my question to you is, how have you taken those principles outside of the mastermind 10-week process? How have you taken those principles and applied them to other aspects of your life? Because we talk about money, we talk about riches and that being money, basically because that's easy to see, it's easy to measure. But how have you applied these principles to other, maybe less tangible, less measurable aspects of your life?
Yeah, so just the process of being able to do something significant in 10 weeks has been helpful. So one of the goals that I have right now, my husband and I are celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary in May. And so in well, I have a little more than 10 weeks, but of course I want to get into a dress in a certain size. So that is one of my goals that I have there. A really big goal that I had last year was to travel a lot. Not a lot, but to go to some places I had never been to before. And because of the focus and the planning and the desire around that, I was able to go to Australia, Costa Rica, St. Thomas, um, Florida, California, Colorado, um, and I can't remember, but several places. But I was able to go. I mean, I never dreamed I would be able to actually go to Australia, but the planning and the desire to do that, to actually travel and I went some places by myself. I went with people who I never would have traveled before previously, but I put it out there. I want to travel, and people and situations and circumstances started to come my way, and I was able to take advantage of those.
Wow. Great example. Great example. And you know, again, tying this back to what you said earlier, these goals can't just be an interest. They have to be they have to be a burning desire. Very similarly, one of my goals for 2024 is to coordinate my an international trip for my mom for the first time, right? For the
Okay.
first time, I wanted to have her experience being in another country because I've enjoyed travel so much. And so we set that as a goal. We started following the steps. And we started doing the things that we need to do. I mean, you got to get a passport. You got to do all these other things. And as of yesterday, we just paid our deposit for our trip to the Dominican Republic. We got the airline, all that stuff taken care of. But it had to be more than just an interest. It had to be something that I don't care what it takes. This is going to happen. And Deborah, I think what you just shared is a great example of how these principles work if you leverage them.
Yep.
Peter, back to you, man. I know this conversation of travel's got you as well because you travel all the time.
I love to travel. What I love about what Deborah had mentioned there, Galen, this, and again, some things just resonate with me. She said, I got traveled so many, I don't even remember. I don't even remember some of the places that I traveled, which is fabulous. And I love to hear that overall. And Deborah, what I've been also able to hear from you is that there was a shift in your how you saw yourself, how you saw what you're able to do, how you saw the possibilities, how you saw the future. If you can compare yourself to then versus now, what was it like then? What is it now? If that makes sense.
Yeah. When I first started my business, I was clear that I was going to start it, and I knew there were some things that I had to do in order for it to happen. I was People talk about having imposter syndrome a bit. And I think I had a little bit of that because my background, as I said, is accounting and finance. I did not study diversity, equity, and inclusion anywhere. And prior to my business, I hadn't really read a whole lot about it. But when I jumped in with both feet and I said, I will be an expert at this. And my lived experience is worth something. So I think part of what the book has helped me to see is that people can't take away from me my lived experience. People don't know my journey. I know what that is, and it's worth something.
Mm.
Means something, and it has value. And I have studied, I have learned, I have trained, I have credentialed myself up. I speak to CEOs and I speak to janitors, and I see people for who they are. They're human beings who are valuable in the world. And we all have a value, we all have a purpose. We just need to see it. And so it helped me have more confidence to be able to do the work that I do with credibility and with some measure of power too. And hopefully be able to inspire somebody else along the way to really seek out, search their own heart, their own mind, and walk into the purpose that they have as well.
Um, my last question before I pass it back over to Ann, sorry, is if you had a message for individuals who are listening right now and they are experiencing a little bit of doubt, imposter, if they're experiencing, you know, facing with a lot of debt or a lot of challenges, circumstances, maybe they're in the middle of a job that they don't like, what message would you provide or have for them in order to see their future, have that silver lining of seeing their future better? What would you share from your own experience that could benefit them possibly?
There is no magic formula. You have to do the work, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's lonely. And I don't mean to paint a bleak picture, but it is hard. Nobody just wakes up one day and is super successful. Um, I told myself when I started my business that I wanted I wanted to do everything in my power for 6 months to make this thing work and to be able to leave my job and do my business full time. And so I did. There were some nights when I got 1 hour of sleep, some nights when I got two. I met with people who knew more about whatever. So the chapter on I can't remember what it's called, but the one where it says that you have to leverage the knowledge of other people. And that's what I did. And I worked hard. So I think you can follow the steps in the book. Um, you can create some steps for yourself, but you have to do the work personally and individually. And know that, I guess, the happier part of this is that when you do the work, when you connect with people, when you have faith and belief in yourself, when you have the desire, even if it doesn't work out like you thought it would or like you planned, you can rest assured knowing that you did all that you could do, all that was in your power, and that the journey, that there was something to learn on the journey, and that has made you a better person because of it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for even some clarification. And I'm kind of excited. I just saw you and Galen in South Florida a little while ago, and Deborah had even mentioned how utilizing other people's knowledge. So I'm gonna tell you and Galen right now, I'm utilizing you all's knowledge for my success.
Mm.
And for those of you who don't know how or when to do that, this is the annual meeting that we just came from recently, and it's going to be happening again every year. 2025 may seem like it's a far ways off, but you blink a couple of times and it'll be here. But don't wait till 2025. Reach out to one of us and ask yourselves, how can, or even Deborah for that matter, well, I'll find out in a little bit how to stay in touch with her, but how can I get involved with a mastermind? How can I surround myself with like-minded individuals who can help me get to the next level? The truth of the matter is, hard work alone doesn't equate to success. And that's what Think and Grow Rich is all about. Okay, I'm off my horse there, high horse there, and back to you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Deborah, I think I have 10 pages so far of notes. Yes, yes, 10.
Wow.
Yes. And that was specialized knowledge principle you were referring to about
Thank you.
leveraging, yes, leveraging the knowledge of others. And ah, listen, everything you've said, and as co-hosts, we often say it is so inspiring when we have a guest like yourself that is literally not just in the book, but in both books. And so as I set that up, I'm going to go back to the International Mastermind Association meeting that we just hosted. And I hope he does not mind me. I started to do it last week, but I chose not to. But yes, Galen, I'm coming for you today. And I'd like to have Galen to share. Of course, I did not ask permission, but we're going to let the Spirit be his guide. It's called Conviction. So one of the things that we do as a part of the International Mastermind Association, we have a survey, and that survey covers 10 areas of our lives. It covers the spiritual, the family, the financial, the health, education, personal development, your business or your career, your recreation, your creativity, and your civic. And we ask each individual attendee to consider writing goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. For me, this is my 40 plus year in this exercise, while in both books, the Think and Grow Rich book, and of course, the book. You can figure that out on your own, the book. And it was so inspiring for me. So I want to publicly say to you, Galen, to all of our listeners all over the world, that I was so encouraged by your aha moment that you had as a part of your survey. So if you don't mind coming back on camera, I know we have just a couple of minutes left, but I think that it's so worth having you share your aha moment about this new goal that you have since now, being a part of this mastermind, you are so accomplished in so many other areas. So would you be willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So the calling, the challenge is to establish a goal in each of those 10 areas of life. And each year I do the survey. It's always easy, it's always fun to list all the things that you've accomplished for your career, for your business, and you can list the things you've done for your financial and for your recreation. And I was doing that this year, and I got kind of embarrassed when I got to spiritual because there really wasn't a passion. There wasn't a long list of things that I was going to do relative to spiritual. And so I thought about a challenge that my church led 14 years ago to read the Bible cover to cover in 90 days. So the 90-day Bible challenge. And I decided, okay, well that sounds like a legit goal. So I established that as a goal for myself, but knowing, having self-awareness and knowing who I am, if I established that goal just for myself, it wasn't going to have the same burning desire to accomplish it. And so I assembled a cohort of 15 people who are going to be on this journey with me. And we meet once a week to talk about our ahas, our revelation, and how it applies to our lives. I've made it very, very clear that I am not teaching the Bible. This is not Bible study. We are going through this journey together, and I'm holding space. But that again, that's a tangible goal. That's a challenging goal for me, and it helps me feel good that I'm meeting the expectation of the survey that you ask us to complete. So again, I want to go back to something that we said earlier. This process works, but only if you work it.
Oh, love it. Thank you so very much, Galen. And with that thought, we're going to go around and wrap up with our aha moments. And so I'll start with you, Dr. Peter. I'll come back to Galen and then Deborah, and we will also share if there's any particular area or product or service that you have that you'd like to have people connect with you.
Yeah, wow. So much stuff. I think my aha moment from listening to Deborah was even the specialized knowledge, and which is why I reiterated it. Just hard work alone is not going to bring you wealth, is not going to bring you riches, is not going to bring you success as you define it. It takes more than that. And this first principle of desire is a good example. And then even the specialized knowledge or other principles, right? It's not just the grind. That's another topic conversation for another time. So those of you who are listening, those of you who are watching, um, just putting in the work and grinding and being up all night, I wonder what you might need to shift in order to make this easier, make it better for you. Thank you so much, Deborah, for that conversation. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on shiftyourmindset.com, LinkedIn at Dr. Peter A. James, or even Instagram at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames. And this was a phenomenal conversation there, Ann. Thanks so much.
Hi. So for me, wow, this has been another great conversation. One of the key things that Deborah, that you really reinforced for me is the importance of being around like-minded people. I think in the book they talk about how a poverty mindset is bold. It doesn't need any assistance. It just comes into any space that's left vacant. But to have a positive mindset in order to do these things that you're wanting to do, you need to have reinforcements from people who are on the same journey that you're on. And that's just a great reminder. That's why I wake up at 5:30 every Saturday morning to be here to hang out with Dr. Peter and Miss Ann so that I can be re-encouraged and reassured of my goals and my visions. My name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership strategist. There's so many ways to get a hold of me on LinkedIn. Facebook, Instagram. But the most fun way, the most profitable way to get in touch with me is to check out the podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We're on every podcast platform, streaming in 20 countries. We talk to leaders literally all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they think it really takes to be an effective leader. I double dog dare you to try us at least once. I guarantee you that you will get something from the conversation. And back to you.
All right, Deborah, if you would share if there's anything that you would like for the audience to know, especially if you have any kind of products or services that you're promoting, and how people can contact you.
Thank you. Again, my name is Debbie Biddle, and I run the People Company Consulting Group, where we help people think better, do better, and be better at what matters most, which is their people. Right now, we are running certificate programs and certification programs in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our next one coming up is called Moving from Rhetoric to Results. We'll talk about the keys to DEI change implementation. So you can reach out on the People Company website, which is ppl-co.com. You'll find all of our programs listed there. If you register today, you can get 50% off any of our programs using the code MORE in 2024. So MOREIN 2024. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so very much for that. You have been listening to the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind with Deborah Biddle. And as you just heard, she has shared her offerings. Just want to remind you that she is a high demand, in high demand, if you will, trainer in this space of DE and I. And Deborah, like I said earlier, it has been a pleasure and a joy to listen to you thread, if you will, these principles together and I attempted to do the math, but it sounded like close to $500,000 in a couple of years just from this process. And we want to encourage everybody, please connect with her. Also, connect with Galen and connect with Peter. I made a commitment here in terms of being accountable that every week that I would promote my book, which is entitled How to Start and Run a Successful Mastermind Group. I'm honored today to be sharing with an NSA Academy for Central Florida this book, these principles, because every time I hear someone like yourself, Deborah, share the benefits of what we've done with these principles, with this book, it challenges me to be consistent, more consistent than I've been, and more committed than I've been, because there are so many people who are looking for a way. And there are a lot of ways. There are lots of ways. But if you want a proven process, the McNeil factor system on how to start and run a profitable mastermind group, this is one way. You can connect with me by going to annmcneil.com, and there are many options there. But the one way, as Galen likes to say, that I think is most profitable is to start and run your own mastermind group, whether it's paid or free, because oftentimes we overlook and neglect the fact that we each need to be held accountable at an entirely different level. And Deborah hit the nail on the head. And so, Deborah, I will just share some of the things that you said, because I think that they were so worth sharing. And one of them is you talked about connecting the faith, the belief, the desire, and that we should all rest assured in knowing that you did all. It doesn't matter if it succeeded in the moment or not, but you know the growth that you've received when you know you have done it all. And I think that we can all definitely relate to that. But again, my name is Ann McNeil, and I am, yes, I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping you to build a stronger and better life and business. And I would encourage each of you to remember to subscribe to this YouTube, click the bell, but also share this podcast with someone that you know that could benefit. It may be you, it may be someone else. But until next time, I want to also encourage you to remember to continue to think and grow richer. See you next time.